I want a 4th round finish. I don't want any early knockout, because then there's ifs, buts, maybes, there's excuses. I want 4 rounds of domination, and in that 4th round, I'm going to tell everybody, I'm going to do it now, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to finish him. I'm going to open the door, I'm going to walk him into my traps, and I'm going to take his head clean off his shoulder.
It seems like Islam's going to fight Ian Garry next, as far as the top of your weight class. Do you think Ian can beat him?
I think Ian's a really high-level fighter, man. I think, it's a tough test for him, but I wouldn't be shocked, man. He's done really well in fights in the past, and there have been moments where there are guys that you think he might struggle with more, and he's looked great. He's one of the best guys out there. It's definitely not a cakewalk of a fight for either one of these guys.
His skills, I just have to run in this camp too much because I have to follow him because he runs too much. I know his game plan. We always see his fight, and he has same style always. But I will try to catch him, take him down. Just what I did with my all opponents.
Now, he's so right about taking the belt from the pound-for-pound #1. If he's able to go steal Islam's belt, I mean, does that make him the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world? He's certainly got a good case there. And I also get how he's such a fan of the sport and keeps his finger on the pulse, where, like, he wasn't going to throw a tantrum if Ilya did somehow beat Justin Gaethje and then get his opportunity against Islam.
Speaking of the gym and AK, your former longtime teammate, Islam's going to be defending his belt for the first time at welterweight coming up. I was just curious if you've been able to speak to him, or maybe any thoughts on the fight or how you see that going.
I haven't spoke with him, but he's a special type of athlete, as we all know. He's one of those guys that are at the pinnacle of this sport here. I talk with Javier all the time, and Islam and those guys are always doing great.
It's a great fight. Ian Garry for a long time has been saying that, he is the future. Obviously, it's his nickname. Like, he sees himself as being there with the belt. He's visualized it, but now he's got Makhachev in the division. And I mean, Makhachev's got the kryptonite for every single person in the division. No matter where the fight goes, he's got the skills to challenge you and to cause you issues. Like, of course, since Ian Garry's, been spending time in Brazil, been working on his jiu-jitsu, he's going to be far more confident in his ground game. But at the same time, I don't know if you're going to be able to replicate what Islam Makhachev can do to.
I want to fight Islam Makhachev, who is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world now. No questions about it, because obviously Ilya was in the conversation, but then with him losing to Justin Gaethje, Islam is unchallenged as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world.
Ian Garry's stated goal of a 4th-round finish against Islam Makhachev reveals a sophisticated understanding of how elite-level wrestling pressure accumulates across fight duration, and it reflects a game plan built on energy system management rather than early knockout power. The specificity of the 4th round is not arbitrary. It's based on the physiological reality that Islam's wrestling-based control system requires constant energy expenditure from both fighters, but particularly from the wrestler, who must maintain pressure, reposition constantly, and dictate the pace. By the 4th round, Islam will have spent 3 full rounds establishing clinch control, attempting takedowns, managing Garry's distance, and recovering from defensive exchanges. Garry's prediction essentially assumes that if he can avoid getting submitted or damaged significantly through the first 3 rounds, while preventing Islam from establishing extended control sequences, then Islam's energy systems will have degraded sufficiently to create openings that Garry can exploit with precision striking. This is not overconfidence. This is recognition that wrestling-based pressure fighting has a mathematical endpoint where the grappler's advantages diminish if the striker can survive the initial onslaught without accumulating catastrophic damage. The foundation of Garry's game plan begins with understanding that his physical advantages, reach, height, and movement capacity, are only functional if he maintains the distance where those advantages operate. Garry's striking range is significantly extended compared to Islam's, which means Garry can land effective strikes from distances where Islam cannot immediately clinch or establish control. This range advantage requires constant active management through footwork, angle changes, and precise distance measurement that prevents Islam from closing the gap during Garry's offensive sequences. The technical challenge is that Garry cannot simply throw from distance and reset. He must maintain constant positional awareness of where Islam is, how Islam is moving, and what entry points Islam might exploit during the transition between strikes. Every stance adjustment, every step backward, every angle change is an opportunity for Islam to close distance if Garry's movement is even marginally late or positioned incorrectly. Garry's movement-based approach to distance management is far more energy-intensive than static positioning, which is why Islam's cardio advantage becomes a complicating factor across 5 rounds. Garry needs to be efficient with his movement, throwing strikes that are purposeful and positioned such that Islam's distance-closing attempts become more costly or dangerous. Garry's striking strategy against Islam cannot be based on raw power or knockout hunting, because those approaches require Garry to commit to exchanges in ways that create clinching opportunities for Islam. Instead, Garry's striking must be calculated, technically precise, and designed to accomplish specific tactical objectives. Landing damage at distance, establishing rhythm that makes Islam hesitant to close, and creating defensive commitments from Islam that waste energy on positioning rather than forward pressure. The jab becomes essential here because it establishes distance, sets up heavier strikes, and forces Islam to respect the range without requiring Garry to commit his weight into deep forward movement. Garry's jab should be thrown with distance awareness, not a range-finding jab that brings him closer to Islam, but a defensive jab that emphasizes lateral movement and reset positioning. The cross becomes the strike that Garry uses to capitalize on Islam's movement toward him, but only when Islam is moving forward and has committed to a specific direction where he cannot easily adjust his angles. Low kicks to Islam's lead leg become particularly valuable because they damage the leg that Islam uses for forward movement and clinch entry, gradually degrading his ability to close distance and control pace as the fight progresses. These kicks must come from positions where Garry's weight is balanced, and he can immediately retreat if Islam attempts to catch the leg or clinch during the kick. Garry's clinch prevention mechanics represent the most technically demanding aspect of his game plan, because they require perfect timing and positioning at the exact moment Islam begins his distance-closing entry. The standard approach of staying on the outside is functionally insufficient against Islam because Islam doesn't need to fully close distance to establish clinch control. He can reach from distances that seem safe and use his long frame and strong clinch positioning to pull Garry inward. Garry's clinch prevention, therefore, requires active engagement with Islam's clinch attempts rather than passive distance management. When Islam begins a forward movement that threatens to close into clinch range, Garry needs to either create angular separation that makes the clinch entry awkward, throw strikes that force Islam to reset, or achieve underhook positioning that allows Garry to dictate the clinch rather than being pulled into Islam's preferred control position. This is significantly more complex than simple retreat because it requires Garry to fight Islam partially within the clinch range while maintaining enough distance that Islam cannot fully establish control. The timing is exceptionally precise. Too early and Garry wastes energy. Too late and Islam has already established positioning advantage. The body shot becomes tactically significant in Garry's game plan because it accomplishes multiple objectives simultaneously. It damages Islam. It forces Islam to defend with his hands, which degrades his clinch entry positioning, and it creates opportunities for Garry to transition to other strikes or movement. Body shots to Islam's ribs and liver are particularly effective because they are difficult to defend while moving forward and clinching, and they accumulate damage across the fight in ways that pure head strikes don't. Garry's body shots must come from positions where he can land cleanly without dropping his hands sufficiently to allow Islam's clinch entries, which requires perfect timing and distance management. The body shot sequence might look like: jab to establish distance, shift weight slightly, throw body shot as Islam reacts to the jab, then immediately create angular movement or throw a follow-up strike that resets the distance. Islam will adapt to these patterns across the fight, which is why Garry needs multiple ways to set up body shots and why pure repetition of the same sequence becomes ineffective. The body damage hypothesis is that by the 4th round, Islam's entire wrestling pressure system will be compromised by accumulated rib damage that makes clinch control less comfortable and wrestling entries more difficult, because maintaining pressure from top position becomes painful. Garry's improved jiu-jitsu, specifically the work he's completed training in Brazil, factors into his defensive strategy by expanding his options once Islam achieves top position. The default assumption from many observers is that Garry will be outmatched on the ground, But elite-level jiu-jitsu training provides defensive frameworks that don't rely on explosive strength or scrambling athleticism. These frameworks emphasize frame positioning, hip positioning to prevent clear transitions, and active defense that makes top position less comfortable for the wrestler. Garry's jiu-jitsu training should have focused on positional retention, escape positioning that doesn't require full explosiveness, and submission defense that prevents Islam from transitioning freely through control positions. The strategic value of this improved ground defense is that it makes Islam's takedowns less rewarding. If Islam takes Garry down but cannot maintain it, the fourth-round finish prediction requires Garry to have both caused significant damage through the first 3 rounds and maintained his own energy system sufficiently to execute powerful, accurate striking in the 4th round when opportunities emerge. This is not simply a matter of Islam fading. It requires that Garry has systematically degraded Islam's pressure capacity through body damage, leg damage from kicks, and defensive exhaustion from constantly chasing Garry and closing distance without establishing extended control. By round 4, Islam should theoretically be moving slightly slower, clinching with slightly less intensity, and be more vulnerable to strikes that require Islam to commit energy to defensive positioning. Garry's finish sequence would involve capitalizing on moments where Islam's movement is fractionally slower, where his clinch entries are slightly less explosive, where his footwork doesn't quite close the gap he intended. These marginal decreases in performance happen naturally across 5 rounds, but they only become finishable if Garry has been efficiently accumulating damage and hasn't been absorbing catastrophic strikes himself. The 4th round timing also reveals Garry's confidence that he can survive 3 full rounds against Islam's relentless pressure, which is itself a significant technical challenge that requires exceptional defensive positioning and distance management. Garry's 4th round prediction ultimately represents confidence in his striking precision, his distance management capability, his improved jiu-jitsu defense, and his ability to outlast Islam's pressure without accumulating catastrophic damage. It's not a prediction based on knockout power or a lucky strike. It's based on systematically executing a technical game plan that requires flawless distance management, efficient striking, body damage accumulation, and enough defensive grappling competence to prevent Islam from establishing extended control sequences. Whether Garry can actually execute this game plan remains the central question, because Islam's wrestling system is precisely engineered to prevent exactly this kind of fighting. Islam's relentless pressure, constant repositioning, and elite-level clinch control create an environment where Garry's distance management becomes progressively more difficult across rounds. Garry's stated confidence suggests he's ready for this challenge, and believes his technical toolkit and fight IQ are sufficient to overcome Islam's wrestling advantages through systematic execution. The fight will determine whether that confidence is justified, or whether Islam's championship-level wrestling pressure is sufficiently oppressive to prevent Garry from executing his technical game plan effectively enough to accumulate the damage necessary for a finish.